Look around you for a moment. Not casually, really observe. Imagine any room, an office meeting, a family dinner, a party full of conversations. 10 people are standing there. On the surface, it looks normal. People talking, laughing, sharing opinions. But if you watch closely, something strange appears. 9 of those people are not actually thinking. They are reacting. They move based on habit, emotion, and the invisible pressure of other people's expectations. They want approval. They fear rejection. They speak just to avoid silence. They believe they are making decisions, but most of the time they are simply following a script written long before they arrived in that room. But there is usually one person who is different. One person is not caught inside the noise. He is quiet, observant, calculating. While everyone else is speaking, he is studying. While others react emotionally, he notices patterns. He sees what people want before they say it. He hears what people try to hide between their words. He doesn't chase validation. He searches for leverage. Chaos doesn't disturb him. It becomes a tool in his hands. And here is the uncomfortable truth most people never realize. If you don't learn to think like that person, you will spend your entire life being controlled by someone who does. Most people go through life confused. They work hard. They try to be good. They follow the rules they were taught as children. Yet somehow they watch others, often louder, more ruthless, sometimes even less competent, rise faster, earn more respect, and gain more influence. And they ask themselves the same question again and again. Why does this keep happening? They blame bad luck. They blame the system. They blame unfairness. But deep down, something else is happening. You were trained to be harmless. From childhood, you were told that honesty always wins, kindness always returns, and fairness governs the world. These ideas sound beautiful. They make society feel comfortable. But the world itself does not operate according to comforting stories. One man understood this centuries ago, Niccolò Machiavelli. His name became associated with manipulation and darkness, but the reality is different. Machiavelli was brutally honest about human nature. He didn't describe the world the way people wished it worked. He described it exactly as it is. And one of his most important observations is still ignored by most people today. If you try to behave perfectly good in a world that is not perfectly good, you become easy to destroy. Now listen carefully. This is not about becoming cruel. This is not about hurting others or turning into a villain. This is about waking up. It is about stepping outside the emotional crowd and learning how the game actually works. Because once you understand the rules beneath the surface, everything changes. But before we go further, if you enjoy exploring the deeper psychology behind power, influence, and human behavior, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Most people watch a few minutes and leave. The ones who stay until the end are the ones who actually change the way they think. And what you're about to hear may completely shift the way you see people around you. The first mistake that traps almost everyone is simple. It feels harmless, but it quietly destroys opportunities, relationships, and peace of mind. You are living inside an illusion. When you enter a negotiation, a friendship, a relationship, or even a workplace conflict, you usually expect people to behave according to how you believe they should behave. If you are honest, you assume honesty will return. If you work hard, you assume recognition will follow. If you sacrifice for someone, you assume loyalty will appear. This belief feels noble, but it is also extremely dangerous. Machiavelli once wrote that a person who tries to practice goodness in every situation will inevitably suffer among people who are not good. Read that slowly. He was not saying kindness is useless. He was saying relying on kindness alone as protection is naive, because most people project their own values onto others. If you have a good heart, you assume everyone else does too. If you explain your feelings sincerely, you expect the other person to understand. If something unjust happens, you expect the universe to correct it. But reality doesn't run on moral expectations. Reality runs on power, incentives, fear, and self-interest. And the moment you truly understand that, something inside you changes. You stop asking emotional questions like, "How could they do this to me?" Instead, you ask a colder and far more useful question. What did they gain from it? Because human behavior almost always follows incentives. People rarely act randomly. They act in ways that protect their interests, increase their status, reduce their fear, or satisfy their desires. Once you start seeing this pattern, you stop being shocked by betrayal. You stop being confused by sudden changes in loyalty. You start predicting them. And prediction is where real power begins. Most people are stunned when a company replaces them for a cheaper employee. They are shocked when a partner chooses someone with more status. They are hurt when a friend spreads rumors to improve their own reputation. But the observer, the strategist, expected it long before it happened. Not because he is cynical, because he understands human nature. The average person walks through life believing the ocean will be gentle to them. The strategist respects the ocean's ability to drown him, so instead of trusting blindly, he builds a boat. And that single difference changes everything. If you want to outthink most people around you, the first step is brutally simple. Stop believing the world will behave the way you wish it would. Start observing how it actually behaves, because once illusions disappear, manipulation loses its power. And suddenly, in a room full of dreamers, the realist becomes the most dangerous mind in the building. The moment you stop expecting the world to behave fairly, something strange happens. You begin to notice things most people completely miss. Conversations start to look different. Small behaviors begin to reveal hidden intentions. Suddenly you realize that words are often the least reliable part of communication. Most people listen to what is being said. The strategist watches what is being done. This single shift separates the observer from the crowd. Because the truth is simple, words are cheap. Words are designed to smooth situations, to gain approval, to avoid conflict. People promise loyalty, kindness, respect, honesty, yet their behavior quietly tells a different story. And behavior never lies for long. Think about how often someone says, "You can trust me," while their actions show the opposite. Or how companies proudly claim, "We're like a family here," while replacing employees the moment profits drop. The average person hears the words and feels comforted. The strategist ignores the performance and studies the pattern. Actions reveal priorities. Once you begin focusing on actions instead of speeches, the world becomes far more predictable. You stop being emotionally surprised by outcomes because you already saw the signals earlier. The promotion that never came. The friend who slowly distanced themselves. The partner who lost respect long before the relationship ended. The signs were always there. Most people just didn't want to see them. The reason is emotional attachment. Human beings desperately want their expectations to be true. We want loyalty to exist where it doesn't. We want fairness to appear where power actually rules, so we ignore small signals until they become undeniable. But the observer does the opposite. He pays attention to the smallest shifts in behavior. A delayed response, a subtle change in tone, a promise that quietly disappears. These signals are not random. They are data, and data allows prediction. This is why the quietest person in the room often understands the situation better than the loudest, because he is not busy proving himself. He is gathering information. Silence, in fact, is one of the most underestimated forms of power. In a world where everyone feels the need to constantly explain themselves, the person who speaks less automatically gains an advantage. When you talk too much, you reveal your thoughts, your insecurities, your intentions, and your weaknesses. Every sentence gives someone else information they can use later. The more you explain yourself, the more tools others receive to analyze you. But when you remain calm and measured with your words, something interesting happens. People begin revealing themselves instead. Try a small experiment the next time you're having a conversation. When someone finishes speaking, resist the urge to immediately respond. Maintain eye contact and simply pause for a few seconds. Most people cannot tolerate silence. Their mind interprets it as pressure, and under pressure, people talk. They add extra details they never planned to share. They reveal doubts, insecurities, or contradictions. The silence creates a vacuum, and humans instinctively rush to fill it. That vacuum becomes your advantage. Because while others rush to explain themselves, you remain still, gathering information. The person who understands more always holds the stronger position, but silence becomes even more powerful when you are challenged. Imagine someone criticizes you publicly or questions your decisions. The natural instinct for most people is immediate defense. They argue, explain, justify, and try to prove themselves right. Emotion takes over, and the attacker wins. Why? Because the moment you defend yourself emotionally, you show that their words affected you. You reveal vulnerability. You give their attack importance. The strategist responds differently. Instead of reacting emotionally, he slows the situation down. Sometimes he says nothing at all. Sometimes he asks a simple question. Why would you think that? And then he waits. Suddenly the pressure shifts. Now the other person must explain themselves. They begin to stumble, over-explain, or retreat. The person who originally attacked now finds themselves defending their position. Control of the conversation quietly changes hands. This technique works because most people survive on reactions. They provoke others to see what response they get. If they see anger, they know where your weakness lies. If they see insecurity, they know where to push next. But if they see calm silence, they cannot map your mind. Unpredictable people are difficult to manipulate, and what humans cannot easily manipulate, they often begin to respect. This same principle applies to your ambitions and goals. Most people talk far too much about what they plan to do. They announce their dreams publicly, explaining every step before anything actually happens. They think sharing their plans will bring encouragement and motivation, but the opposite often occurs. The moment you reveal your intentions, you invite doubt, criticism, and interference. Friends project their fears onto you. Competitors quietly prepare obstacles, and worst of all, your brain receives a small reward simply for talking about the goal. You feel accomplished without doing the work. That small psychological reward slowly kills your drive. The strategist protects his plans differently. He moves quietly. He allows others to underestimate him. Let them think you are average. Let them believe you are unambitious. Let them overlook you entirely. Underestimation is protection. When people do not see you as a threat, they stop watching you carefully. They relax their guard. They reveal more information, and they waste energy competing with louder opponents. Meanwhile, you continue building quietly, and one day the result appears suddenly. To them it feels like you came from nowhere, but in reality, you were simply moving while they were busy talking. Reduce unnecessary explanations, shorten your responses, protect your intentions. Speak only when your words serve a purpose, because the less predictable you appear, the harder it becomes for others to control your direction. And once people realize they cannot easily read you, something subtle begins to change. They start paying attention. They start respecting your presence. And without raising your voice at all, you begin to gain influence in rooms where others are still fighting to be heard. But there is an important danger hidden inside this strategy. If you become too silent, too distant, too controlled, people may begin to see you as cold or mysterious in a threatening way. Human beings are instinctively suspicious of what they cannot understand. If they cannot read you at all, they may start imagining the worst. And when people fear something too much, they often try to destroy it before it becomes powerful. So the real skill is not simply being silent or detached. The real skill is balance. You must learn to blend into the environment while still maintaining control of yourself. In other words, you wear a mask. Now, most people misunderstand the idea of wearing a mask. They assume it means pretending to be someone perfect. They try to hide their flaws, exaggerate their success, and present an image that looks impressive. But this approach usually backfires. Perfection creates envy. If you appear flawless, confident, successful, and emotionally untouchable all the time, people begin to feel uncomfortable around you. Your presence reminds them of their own weaknesses, and human beings often respond to that discomfort with quiet resentment. The strategist avoids this mistake. Instead of pretending to be perfect, he practices something much more subtle: controlled imperfection. Every now and then he reveals a small flaw, a harmless mistake, a minor worry, something that makes him appear human and relatable. But the key is that he chooses the flaw carefully. It is never a weakness that truly threatens his position. For example, he might ask for advice about something he already understands. He might admit to a small miscalculation. He might laugh at a personal mistake. These moments make people relax around him. Why? Because asking someone for advice triggers a powerful psychological response. It makes them feel intelligent. It makes them feel valued. It makes them feel slightly superior. And when someone feels superior to you, their guard drops. They begin to trust you more easily. They talk more openly. They feel safe sharing information. Meanwhile, you are still quietly observing everything around you. This technique has existed for centuries. It was often used in royal courts, where survival depended on reading people correctly. A wise courtier never appeared threatening. He appeared helpful, agreeable, even slightly dependent. Behind that mask, however, he was carefully studying everyone in the room. This leads to another uncomfortable truth most people struggle to accept. The idea that you should always be yourself in every situation is not wisdom. It is laziness. When you are alone, being completely authentic is harmless. But the moment you step into the social world, you are stepping onto a stage. Every environment has its own expectations, pressures, and dynamics. Refusing to adapt simply means surrendering control of the outcome. Think about a parent comforting a frightened child. The parent may be exhausted, worried, or frustrated inside, but they do not express those emotions in that moment. Instead, they put on the mask of calm reassurance because the child needs stability. That is not deception. That is emotional maturity. The same principle applies everywhere. Imagine your boss is shouting at you during a stressful moment. Your authentic emotional reaction might be anger. You might feel the urge to shout back or defend yourself immediately, but your strategic mind understands the consequences. Exploding emotionally in that moment might cost you your job, your reputation, or your future opportunities. So instead, you control your reaction. You stay calm, you listen, you respond professionally. Later, when the moment passes, you decide your next move carefully. Maybe you plan your exit. Maybe you reposition yourself inside the organization. Maybe you simply observe and wait. The mask protects you. It creates a barrier between your true self and the unpredictable behavior of others. When people interact with your mask, they cannot easily reach the deeper parts of your mind. They may criticize the performance, but your real thoughts remain untouched. This is why the most effective individuals learn to adjust their behavior depending on the situation. Sometimes the situation requires strength and assertiveness. Other times it requires patience, charm, or diplomacy. The problem is that most people operate in only one mode. Some people are always aggressive. They push, argue, and dominate every interaction. Others are always passive. They avoid conflict, agree with everyone, and quietly accept whatever happens. Both extremes are weaknesses. The strategist learns to shift between roles. Sometimes he becomes the lion, direct, confident, and dominant when necessary. Other times he becomes the fox, adaptable, subtle, and observant. The power comes from choosing the role intentionally. And this flexibility allows you to navigate situations that trap most people. When emotions control someone, they become predictable. And predictable behavior is easy to manipulate. But someone who can control their responses, adjust their approach, and stay emotionally balanced becomes extremely difficult to control. Their mind remains their own. And when your mind remains independent from emotional impulses, you begin operating on a completely different level than the crowd around you. Most people react automatically, but you begin to respond strategically. Now we arrive at a truth that many people resist hearing. From childhood, you were taught that the goal of life is to be liked by everyone. Be polite. Avoid conflict, keep the peace, make sure no one dislikes you. It sounds like wisdom, but in reality it quietly traps millions of people in mediocrity. Because if nobody ever disagrees with you, it usually means you stand for nothing. A person who tries to please everyone slowly becomes invisible. They adjust their opinions depending on the room. They soften their beliefs to avoid tension. They sacrifice their own priorities just to maintain approval. Over time, people begin to sense this weakness, and weakness rarely earns respect. This is where many people misunderstand the idea of enemies. They see enemies as something purely negative, something that should be avoided at all costs. But the truth is far more complex. In many cases, your enemies reveal more useful information than your friends ever will. Friends often protect your feelings. They soften criticism. They avoid pointing out flaws because they don't want to hurt you. Their loyalty is comforting, but sometimes it hides a reality. An enemy does the opposite. An enemy watches carefully. They search for weaknesses with the attention of a hunter. If there is a crack in your armor, they will notice it immediately. If there's a mistake in your strategy, they will highlight it loudly. Their criticism may come from hostility, but that doesn't make the information useless. In fact, sometimes it makes the information brutally honest. Instead of reacting emotionally to criticism, study it. Ask yourself why the attack happened. Did they find a real weakness in your behavior, your discipline, or your strategy? If so, they have accidentally given you a free lesson. If their attack comes purely from jealousy or insecurity, that also tells you something valuable. It means your progress is beginning to threaten them. Either way, the information helps you grow stronger. This mindset transforms conflict into fuel. Instead of breaking under pressure, you begin using pressure as a tool for development. This is what some thinkers describe as becoming anti-fragile. Fragile things break under stress. Robust things survive stress without changing. But anti-fragile things actually improve because of stress. The challenge strengthens them instead of destroying them. Most people are fragile. One harsh comment ruins their day. One failure convinces them to quit. One moment of embarrassment stops them from trying again. But individuals who train their minds differently begin to treat adversity as a kind of training ground. Doubt from others becomes motivation. Criticism becomes feedback. Resistance becomes proof that progress is happening. History is full of examples of people who used this kind of fuel. Many of the most competitive and driven individuals kept long memories of every person who doubted them. Instead of forgetting those moments, they transformed them into motivation. Not out of hatred, but out of determination, because the desire to prove something, especially to yourself, can be an incredibly powerful force. This is why conflict should not automatically scare you. If you find yourself in an environment where everyone constantly agrees with you, there is a strong chance you are no longer growing. You are simply repeating comfortable ideas inside a safe circle. Growth rarely happens in comfortable rooms. It happens where your ideas are challenged, where your assumptions are tested, and where you are forced to sharpen your thinking. The presence of disagreement can feel uncomfortable, but it often creates the conditions necessary for improvement. At the same time, another trap exists in modern life that quietly weakens people's ability to think strategically. Impatience. We live in an era of instant gratification. Messages arrive instantly. Food can appear at your door in minutes. Entertainment is delivered in short clips, designed to capture attention for only a few seconds. Everything encourages speed, and slowly, this environment begins to reshape how people think. Most individuals now struggle to imagine outcomes that take years to develop. If something doesn't produce immediate results, they lose interest quickly. If success doesn't arrive within weeks or months, they assume the effort failed. But real influence, real mastery, and real independence almost always require time. The strategist understands something the impatient mind cannot tolerate. Power compounds slowly. Skills compound slowly. Reputation compounds slowly. Just like financial investments, the greatest results appear only after long periods of consistent effort. While most people chase quick rewards, the patient individual focuses on building foundations, while others react emotionally to daily news, trends, and distractions. The strategist studies patterns that unfold across years. This requires discipline that feels uncomfortable at first. Patience is not passive waiting. Patience is controlled restraint. It means resisting the urge to quit early. It means resisting the urge to chase every new opportunity that appears. It means staying focused on goals that may take years to fully reveal their value. Psychologists often describe this ability as delayed gratification, the capacity to sacrifice small pleasures today for greater rewards later. Surprisingly, this one skill predicts success in many areas of life more accurately than intelligence alone. People who can delay gratification tend to build stronger careers, stronger financial stability, and stronger personal discipline. Yet in a world obsessed with speed, this skill has become rare. Most people consume the reward immediately. They spend money before earning it. They abandon long-term projects for short-term excitement. They choose convenience today even when it damages their future tomorrow. The strategist moves differently. When faced with a decision, he asks a simple question: will this matter years from now? If the answer is no, he refuses to waste energy on it. If the answer is yes, he commits deeply. This way of thinking transforms time into an ally instead of an enemy. And while the crowd rushes toward quick victories that disappear just as quickly, the patient mind quietly builds something far more powerful beneath the surface. There is another belief that society repeats so often that people rarely question it. You are told that being selfish is wrong. You are told that good people always sacrifice themselves for others. You are told that the more you give, the more admirable you become. On the surface, that sounds noble, but look closely at the people who follow that rule blindly. Many of them are exhausted. They say yes to everything. They take on responsibilities that were never theirs. They spend their time solving other people's problems while their own lives slowly fall apart. Instead of being respected, they are quietly used. The truth is uncomfortable, but it must be understood. A person who is weak cannot protect anyone. A person who is unstable cannot support anyone. And a person who sacrifices everything eventually becomes resentful of the very people they tried to help. Real strength begins with rational self-interest. This does not mean becoming cruel or careless toward others. It means recognizing that your energy, your time, and your attention are limited resources. If you spend them carelessly, you eventually have nothing left, not for yourself, and not for anyone else. Think about the instruction given on airplanes during emergencies. Passengers are told to put on their own oxygen mask before helping others. The reason is simple. If you lose consciousness, you cannot help anyone. Life works the same way. You must secure your own stability first. Your health, your discipline, your knowledge, your finances, your purpose. Only then do you gain the power to help others from a position of strength instead of obligation. Many people struggle with a simple word, no. They feel guilty saying it. They worry that refusing requests will make them appear selfish or unfriendly. But every time you say yes to something you don't truly want to do, you are quietly saying no to your own priorities. Time is the one resource that never returns. Once a day passes, it disappears forever. When you give your time to everything and everyone without boundaries, you slowly trade your future for small moments of temporary approval. People who respect themselves understand this. They choose their commitments carefully. They protect their schedule. They build their own strength first. And ironically, this often leads to greater respect from others. Because when someone values their own time, others begin valuing it as well. At some point in life, Almost everyone enters a difficult phase, a season where growth requires distance. Old habits must be abandoned. Some friendships fade. Certain expectations from family or society must be challenged. This period can feel lonely, but it is also necessary. Just as a tree must sometimes be pruned for healthier branches to grow, a person must sometimes release relationships and habits that drain their energy. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Respect becomes more important than approval. Approval is fragile. People admire you while you're useful to them, and they forget you the moment your usefulness disappears. Respect, however, grows from boundaries, discipline, and consistency. It remains even when people disagree with you. But perhaps the most important transformation happens inside your own mind. Most people live as prisoners of their emotions. Something frustrating happens and they explode with anger. Something painful happens and they collapse into discouragement. Their reactions are automatic, almost mechanical. Emotion appears, action follows. But there is another way to operate. Instead of treating emotions as commands, you can treat them as signals, energy, raw psychological fuel that can be redirected. Anger, for example, carries enormous intensity. Most people waste it arguing, complaining, or seeking revenge. But that same energy can be redirected into improvement. It can drive discipline. It can push someone to train harder, work longer, study deeper, or rebuild themselves after failure. The same emotion that destroys one person can become motivation for another. Pain can function the same way. Heartbreak, disappointment, humiliation. These experiences feel heavy because they carry emotional weight. Yet throughout history, many artists, thinkers, and innovators transformed that weight into creativity and determination. They converted suffering into strength. This ability is sometimes described as emotional mastery. It doesn't mean eliminating feelings. It means observing them instead of being controlled by them. Imagine your mind as a control room. Thoughts and emotions appear on the screens in front of you. Most people smash the controls whenever something uncomfortable appears. They react instantly, but a disciplined mind pauses and observes the signal first. Interesting, it might say internally. Anger detected, energy rising. Instead of releasing that energy randomly, it redirects it toward meaningful action. Once you gain this ability, something powerful happens. External events lose their ability to control your behavior. People may attempt to provoke you, criticize you, or manipulate your emotions. But if you remain the observer of your own reactions, their influence weakens dramatically. Freedom begins inside the mind. When these principles come together, clear observation, controlled speech, strategic patience, emotional discipline, and strong personal boundaries, you begin to move through the world differently. You no longer feel the need to compete for attention in every room. You no longer panic when situations become chaotic. Instead of reacting impulsively, you pause, analyze, and choose your response carefully. Calm replaces confusion. The loudest voice is no longer the most impressive one to you. You notice insecurity behind arrogance. You notice manipulation hidden behind flattery. Patterns become visible everywhere, and with that awareness comes a quiet kind of confidence. Not arrogance, not superiority, just clarity. But there is one final warning. The moment you begin believing you have mastered these ideas completely is the moment you become vulnerable again. Pride can blind even the most observant mind. The true strategist never assumes he has finished learning. He remains a student of human nature, always watching, always adapting, always refining his understanding, because the game never truly ends. And if this perspective changed the way you see people and power, take a moment to let me know in the comments. I'm curious which part challenged your thinking the most. Share this video with someone who enjoys deep conversations about psychology and human behavior. And if you want to keep exploring ideas like this, ideas about strategy, mindset, and the hidden patterns behind influence, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next discussion. Most people will scroll away and forget everything they heard, but the few who truly understand will begin seeing the world very differently from today forward.